In a remote corner of the Appalachians, deep in the forests of West Virginia, stands an abandoned hunting cabin. For decades, this place has been shrouded in dark legends and rumors of inexplicable phenomena. Local folklore speaks of strange lights in the woods, unexplained disappearances, and eerie sounds echoing through the valleys on moonless nights. In 2018, a young journalist named Emily Baker, known for her investigations into paranormal phenomena for the popular podcast Shadows of the Past, became interested in this mysterious place. Emily was a skeptic at heart, always seeking logical explanations for seemingly supernatural events. She had built a reputation for debunking urban legends and exposing hoaxes. The cabin in the Appalachians presented her with a perfect opportunity to add another notch to her belt of rational explanations. Emily spent weeks researching the cabin's history, interviewing locals, and preparing for her investigation. She discovered that the cabin dated back to the 1930s and was originally built by a reclusive trapper named Jebediah Hawkins. According to local lore, Hawkins disappeared under mysterious circumstances in 1952, and the cabin had remained abandoned ever since. Determined to uncover the truth, Emily decided to spend a night in the cabin to once and for all debunk what she thought was just another hoax. She packed her equipment, including high-definition cameras, audio recorders, and various sensors designed to detect changes in temperature, electromagnetic fields, and air pressure. Emily arrived on September 23rd, the day of the autumn equinox. As she approached the cabin, an unsettling feeling crept over her. The forest seemed unnaturally quiet, devoid of the usual chirping of birds or rustling of small animals. She shook off the feeling, attributing it to her imagination and the cabin's eerie reputation. Her last Twitter post was made at 7:43 p.m. Entering the cabin, it's colder inside than outside, strange smell, like a mixture of mold and ozone, starting to set up the equipment. After that, all communication with her ceased. What happened next remains one of the most enigmatic mysteries in modern America. When Emily failed to check in with her producer the following morning, alarm bells started ringing. A search and rescue team was dispatched 3 days later, but they found the cabin empty. The investigators were baffled by what they discovered. The camera recordings were inexplicably distorted. They showed only blurred shadows and a low-frequency hum interrupted by static noise. In some frames, strange luminous orbs could be seen moving across the room. Audio experts analyzed the recordings but could not explain the origin of the bizarre sounds captured on tape. All of the journalist's belongings were in place, including an untouched backpack with provisions and functioning cameras. It seemed as if Emily had simply vanished into thin air. There were no signs of struggle, no evidence of foul play, and no indication that she had left the cabin voluntarily. The search for Emily Baker continued for several months. Local authorities, the FBI, and volunteers participated in the operation. The case attracted national attention, with media outlets speculating wildly about what could have happened to the young journalist. The forest around the cabin was combed thoroughly, with search dogs and thermal imagers employed. However, not a single trace of the missing journalist was found. As weeks turned into months, hope began to fade. Emily's family and friends were left with countless unanswered questions and a gnawing sense of loss. A year after Emily's disappearance, a new twist occurred in this mysterious story. A local ranger named Tom Blackwood claimed to have seen a woman who bore a striking resemblance to the missing journalist. According to Blackwood's statement, he was patrolling the area near the cabin when he spotted a figure moving through the trees. At first, I thought it was just another hiker, Blackwood reported. But as I got closer, I realized it was a woman wandering between the trees as if in a trance. When I called out to her, she turned, and I swear it was Emily Baker. But there was something off about her. Blackwood's account took an even more chilling turn. For a moment, I thought I could see the tree trunks through her body. It was like she wasn't fully there. Then she dissolved into a thick fog that suddenly enveloped the forest. By the time the fog cleared, she was gone. "I've been a ranger for 20 years, and I've never seen anything like it." The ranger's testimony reignited interest in the case and sparked new theories about Emily's fate. Some believed she had fallen victim to a tragic accident or foul play, while others embraced more supernatural explanations. After this incident, the cabin was officially closed to visitors and declared a dangerous site. Authorities erected a fence around the property and installed surveillance cameras. Warning signs were posted, citing unstable structures and dangerous wildlife as reasons to stay away. However, this didn't stop the curious and adventure seekers. Numerous trespassers were caught trying to investigate the cabin, each hoping to solve the mystery of Emily Baker's disappearance. As time passed, the legend of the haunted cabin only grew. Locals claim that every fall on the equinox, strange sounds come from the forest, as if someone is calling for help or trying to say something. Some believe it's Emily's voice, trapped between worlds. Others dismiss these claims as overactive imaginations fueled by the tragic story. Paranormal investigators have flocked to the area, hoping to capture evidence of ghostly activity, but none have managed to replicate the strange phenomena reported on the night of Emily's disappearance. The mystery of the hunting cabin in the Appalachians continues to stir minds, reminding us that even in our age of technology and rational thinking, there remain enigmas that defy logical explanation. Emily Baker's disappearance stands as a chilling testament to the unknown forces that may lurk in the shadows of our world, waiting to challenge our understanding of reality. As years pass, the truth behind what happened in that cabin on that fateful night remains elusive. Was Emily the victim of an elaborate hoax, a tragic accident, or something far more sinister and otherworldly? The forests of West Virginia keep their secrets, and the ghost of Emily Baker, real or imagined, continues to haunt the imaginations of all who hear her disturbing story. Alice Donovan never believed in the supernatural. As an experienced investigative journalist, she relied solely on facts and logic. However, an assignment to the small town of Milbrook in Maine would forever change her worldview. At first glance, Milbrook seemed idyllic, with cozy houses and friendly residents, but behind this facade lurked a sinister secret. Over the past 5 years, 23 people had vanished without a trace. The police were at a dead end, and local residents avoided discussing the topic. Alice began her investigation by interviewing relatives of the missing. Soon, she noticed a strange pattern. All disappearances occurred on the night of the full moon. Moreover, shortly before vanishing, many had complained about strange sounds coming from the forest surrounding the town. Alice's first night in Milbrook became a living nightmare. Piercing screams echoing from the forest made her blood run cold. In the morning, she discovered a strange symbol on her hotel room doorstep, drawn with something suspiciously resembling blood. The deeper Alice delved into Milbrook's history, the more sinister the picture became. In the basement of an old church, she found ancient records describing a monstrous pact between the first settlers and an ancient evil dwelling in the woods. The pages were riddled with horrifying illustrations of indescribable creatures, the mere sight of which made the mind refuse to believe in their reality. At night, Alice was haunted by nightmares where she saw shadows devouring people alive and trees coming to life, grabbing unsuspecting victims with their branches. She would wake up in cold sweat, feeling someone's intense gaze upon her from the darkness. When Alice tried to leave Milbrook, she discovered that all roads leading out of town had mysteriously disappeared. Her mobile phone didn't work, and there was no internet connection. She was trapped in a town gripped by ancient evil. As the full moon approached, the atmosphere in the town became increasingly oppressive. Alice noticed how the eyes of local residents began to glow with an unnatural light, and their movements became jerky, as if controlled by something external. Friendly smiles were replaced by cold, almost predatory gazes. In a desperate search for answers, Alice broke into the town hall one night. In a secret room beneath the building, she discovered ancient artifacts and a ghastly mural depicting grotesque creatures emerging from the forest to claim human sacrifices. Among the artifacts was a centuries-old book meticulously recording the names of all who had been offered over the years. On the night of the ritual, Alice witnessed a terrifying spectacle. Townspeople gathered in the square, dressed in black robes, chanting in an unknown language. The mayor, his face contorted in a mad grimace, raised a ritual dagger over a bound victim. At that moment, the forest seemed to come alive, and Alice saw tentacles of thick black smoke emerging from the darkness, reaching towards the town. Realizing she was the only one who could stop this horror, Alice made a desperate move. She ran into the square, offering herself as a voluntary sacrifice. The crowd froze, then parted, allowing her to the center of the ritual circle. As Alice stepped into the forest, she found herself in a nightmarish world where reality distorted before her eyes. Trees whispered in unknown languages, the ground pulsated like a living creature. She advanced deeper into the woods, feeling an invisible presence thickening around her. In the heart of the forest, Alice discovered an ancient tree, its trunk twisted into the shape of a screaming face. As she approached it, she felt an all-encompassing presence surround her. An ancient and terrible voice spoke directly into her mind, demanding to know the purpose of her coming. Alice, gathering all her will, replied that she had come to end the curse, voluntarily offering herself not out of fear, but out of love for the innocent victims. The air thickened with tension as the presence seemed to consider her words. Suddenly, a blinding light burst from the tree. Alice felt herself being torn apart and reassembled, her consciousness expanding to encompass the entire forest. She saw the town's history unfolding before her eyes, centuries of fear and sacrifices that had fed the evil. At the last moment, as the tendrils of darkness reached for her, Alice found the strength to resist the horror. Her selfless sacrifice created a flash of light that tore through the darkness. The ancient evil howled in pain and rage, its power over the town shattered. In town, the gathered people watched in awe as the forest was illuminated by a bright light. When it faded, they found themselves freed from the compulsion that had held them captive for generations. The ancient artifacts crumbled to dust, and the mural in the secret room vanished. Alice Donovan was never seen again, but from that day on, Milbrook truly became the idyllic town it had always appeared to be. The disappearances stopped, and the oppressive atmosphere dissipated. Years later, visitors to Milbrook sometimes reported seeing a ghostly woman walking through the forest at night, her presence bringing a sense of peace and protection. And on full moon nights, some swore they could hear a soft whisper in the wind, reminding them of the power of sacrifice and the courage of a woman who faced ancient evil. The story of Milbrook became an urban legend, attracting thrill seekers from across the country. But only a few knew the terrifying truth behind these tales, and the price that was paid to save the town from an ancient evil that might still be waiting for its time in the dark depths of the forest. Anna had always prided herself on her rational mind. As a successful psychotherapist, she helped people deal with their fears and anxieties. But a new patient named Max turned her world upside down. Max came to her with an unusual complaint. He claimed to hear silence, not just the absence of sound, but a living, pulsating silence that seemed to be watching him. Anna was skeptical, assuming it was probably a manifestation of an anxiety disorder or the early stages of schizophrenia. However, as the sessions continued, Anna began to notice oddities. Every time Max talked about the watching silence, the office seemed to get colder. Sounds from outside would fade away as if the room was being separated from the rest of the world by an invisible barrier. Anna tried to rationalize what was happening, attributing everything to coincidences and imagination. But then the nightmares began. Every night she found herself in endless darkness, where the only sound was her own breathing, and the louder she tried to scream, the denser the silence around her became. After a particularly difficult night, Anna decided to delve into Max's history. She discovered that 5 years ago, he had been the sole survivor of a terrible accident in which his entire family had died. Rescuers found him in a mangled car, trapped between the bodies of his parents and sister. He had spent almost a day in this nightmare before being discovered. Anna realized that Max's watching silence was a traumatic memory that had taken on a life of its own. But the more she tried to help him, the more this silence seeped into her own life. She began to notice moments of absolute silence in the most unexpected places, in a noisy supermarket, on a busy street, in her own living room. In these moments, the world seemed to freeze, and Anna felt someone's intense gaze upon her. Colleagues began to notice changes in her behavior. Anna looked exhausted, constantly looking over her shoulder and flinching at the slightest noise. She began to avoid communication, spending more and more time in the silence of her office. One day, during a session with Max, something inexplicable happened. When he once again spoke about the watching silence, all sounds disappeared, completely. Anna couldn't even hear her own heartbeat. At that moment, she saw it, a shadow swirling in the corner of the office, not cast by any object, and this shadow seemed to be looking directly at her. Anna blinked, and everything returned to normal. Max continued talking, not noticing anything unusual, but she knew that what she had seen was real. From that day on, Anna's life turned into a nightmare. Silence pursued her everywhere, becoming more and more tangible. She felt its presence even in the noisiest places. The shadows in the corners of her house seemed to lengthen and move when she wasn't looking at them directly. Anna began to research the phenomenon of watching silence, delving into occult texts and little-known psychological theories. She found mentions of ancient entities that fed on human fears and traumas. Some sources called them noise eaters, creatures that filled the voids of silence to penetrate our world. She realized that in trying to help Max, she had inadvertently opened a door for this entity. Now she was connected to it, and every moment of silence became a potential threat. Anna tried to fill her life with sounds. She turned on music and television, not turning them off even at night. But more and more often, electronics would fail for no apparent reason, plunging her home into an ominous silence. In desperation, she turned to Max, hoping to find answers. But she discovered that he had vanished without a trace. His apartment stood empty, as if no one had ever lived there. All records of him had mysteriously disappeared from her archives. Anna's colleagues raised the alarm when she stopped showing up for work. The police, called to check, found her apartment in perfect order, but without any sign of the owner's presence. The only clue was an inscription on the bathroom mirror, made with lipstick: "Silence is watching." The investigation yielded no results. Anna seemed to have dissolved into thin air. Her disappearance became the subject of heated discussions in psychological circles and a topic for urban legends. Years later, one of Anna's patients, who had undergone treatment shortly before her disappearance, turned to a new therapist with an unusual complaint. She claimed that sometimes she heard her former doctors whisper in moments of absolute silence, a whisper warning about something watching from the void. They say if you listen to the silence carefully enough, you can hear the echo of other people's fears and the screams of those who were absorbed by it. And somewhere out there, in this endless emptiness, Anna is still trying to warn us about the danger lurking in the very heart of silence. But are we ready to hear her voice? And will this attempt become our own ticket to the realm of eternal, watching silence?